Around the fact that we're considering a few decisions. These aren't decisions that we have taken, but these are decisions that we're considering. And I just want to share also the logic behind these decisions. Why are we really thinking about these decisions? What is really the logic behind this? None of these decisions are made. They all depend on the inputs that come from you, and this is pretty much work in progress. But there are seven such decisions that I have sort of articulated based on our conversations around the movement, and there are opinions all across on this. So um, the first one is sort of moving towards what we call older youth, and the South Asian Youth Conference age limit typically has been 25, stretchable to 27, 28. Uh, but we're now exploring saying, can we redefine youth as being under 40, as the World Economic Forum looks at people under 40 as young people. The core logic, more than anything else, is it takes longer in South Asia. If you're a young person in South Asia to get politically powerful or powerful as a business person anywhere, it's going to take much longer. We are typically not people who really sort of quote unquote make it and into positions of power in our late 20s, and therefore the one conversation is around at what age do we cut off. The upper of that is 40. It could be 35. It could be much lesser, of course. But the idea is that we really question where, or what kind of what age group of people do we include. The hope is that we want to create a network of people who are politically active and who are powerful, and therefore having a group of people who have really also reached a position of influence will increase our own influence. So the first conversation is around moving towards older youth, and I'd love to have you guys also type into the chat box to share what you guys think about each of these different proposals. So feel free to use the chat box there as well. Um, the second one is focusing more on sharing stories and connections. So the focus of SAYC has always been around building a stronger region. We were doing a lot of capacity building in SAYC through webinars and workshops. The idea was that let us bring together leaders who do not have access to training and resources. So that was definitely one of the focuses. The declaration drafting was the other focus. But as we move towards a conference which has more experienced people, we're also thinking of focusing much more on sharing stories and connections. So can we really share what is working when we are running projects, right? So we're looking now at moving into existing projects over new ones. So the SAYC came together and we had a list of projects that we were going to do. These projects did not fully work out primarily because of lack of resources, because we did not have either the time, the money, or the energy to get these things done. So our idea is, instead of starting newer projects, can we really look at existing projects, and can we focus more on therefore what is working in these projects, looking at sharing stories and connections from these projects. So that's kind of the second thought process. And what this means is that existing projects and connecting with people who already are doing work in South Asia is kind of is the idea that we're really thinking about. Uh, the third one that we're really thinking about is to reduce the local organizing burden. So in the past, we've looked at, I mean, ourselves, and also looked at Hila and Ion, and organizing SAYC is by no means an easy task. It requires a lot of volunteers, a lot of manpower on the field. So we are asking ourselves, can we reduce the local organizing burden so that the local organizer can run SAYC in a much easier way, with much lesser resources. And what this looks like is that there has been a lot of subsidizing. So the first SAYC was completely free, and the second was also mostly free, except occasionally you'd have to buy something, but it was mostly free. Third SAYC had a cost component where you paid for your food and stay, but not for anything else. But we are now considering making it a very simple process where a local organizer identifies a space. Of course, local organizers will look for donors, and if we find sponsors, nothing like it. But primarily, think of it as a meeting where we just divide the costs of the actual meeting. So we pay for our travel, we come together, we divide costs. And what that will let local organizers do is focus more on the program, on the speakers, and the assumption or the hope is that young people are resourceful enough to raise funds, as well as the more experienced people do not have a funding constraint, right? So instead of preoccupying the local organizers' time only with funding and fundraising, we look at saying, can we have local organizers focus much more on the program and then let participants kind of uh, share the costs and the expenses. So that's the next kind of decision that is being considered. And I'm not seeing too much activity in the chat box. So if some of you will discuss that. So these are Nivedita. So these are not decisions which have been made. These are things we are considering. And then based on what you guys say and what young people in general say, we'd like to hear from you all. Uh, the fourth one is around engaging the government much more. So when SAYC, the first SAYC started, we deliberately chose to distance ourselves from the government because we saw that government influence will hijack the neutrality of a platform, and the platform will become just another way of the government to say what it is saying rather than questioning the government. But the idea is now we're looking at engaging the government much more. So can we really look at the government listening to us, not only being present and talking to us, but really listening to us out of the legitimacy, one of numbers, the fact that lots of people are connected to the movement, two of diversity, given that there are very few all country platforms, even the South Asian youth, sort of the SARC official youth conference, does not have a presence as active and as spirited as our presence. And so, therefore, we claim the moral ground in a way of saying that, hey, you know what, we are a collection of young people around, and we have numbers, and we are present in all countries, and we have some really good ideas. So please listen to us. And one of the dreams is to take common issues across all countries. So, for example, an issue of saying let's have youth parliaments in all countries. So we take a common issue across South Asia and push our governments to increase youth representation. So these kind of conversations are planned for the next SAYC because these require a face-to-face conversation, of course. But the general point is that the power of our platform really needs to increase, and as more and more people plug in, and as more and more wisely the power is used, the more we'll be able to increase our power
İleride
and
burada.
influence, and really push governments towards making more peaceful decisions and towards more solidarity. The fifth one is collaborating with other platforms. Instead of SAYC, this time we moved to SAY Central, which was basically South Asian Youth Central. And we're really thinking about how we can get other platforms to connect and really not make this about names. I think one of the biggest challenges we face is, oh, under whose name is this happening, and who owns this platform. And if we're able to solve for that problem, then we'll be able to collaborate with multiple platforms under a common domain. And therefore, SAY Central meant to be the South Asian Youth Central. And because of South Asian Youth Central, the idea is that it becomes a space for multiple movements to kind of come together and really exist together, share resources, share energies, share capacity. But when a certain issue or a cause is going to be taken up, everybody kind of comes together and so on. Yeah, Jatin, we'd love to hear about Alumni Achievers. So I'll be opening space also for each of you to speak, or those of you who would like to speak. And Also, yeah, we agree that participation fees, we can keep separate fees. Again, depending on what local organizers are able to raise. The intention, of course, is to do a completely free conference where we can fly everyone down. Uh, but that's the broad thrust. The seventh one is sorry, so I think sixth one's mixed up with
Sixth
collaborating with
one.
other platforms. The seventh one is mixing invitations with selections. So we're saying that earlier SAYCs had a selection process where you would fill in an application form and say that, hey, you know what, I care about South Asia, and if selected, I'm going to do this and this and this, and therefore please select me. And it had almost no invitations except the previous organizers obviously were invited because they were part of the movement. So now we are considering saying, can we mix invitations with selection? So we invite some people who we think, some young people who are outstanding young people who are doing amazing work, because the idea is also how do we keep on increasing the quality of participation, the kind of participants who come in. So it becomes an inspiring space. But not close down the selection, of course. So keep it a mix of invitations and selections. But what that means is action before and not after, which means that your application is not really going to be judged on your hopes about South Asia or what you're saying you will do for South Asia, but based on what you're already doing in the South Asian youth context or how active you are. And this doesn't necessarily only mean projects or organizations, but also engagement on the platforms like Facebook or on Twitter or wherever. The question is how active you are in South Asia. I think that's going to be the core decision point. So what we are saying is action needs to happen before and not after SAYC, which means to be selected also for the coming SAYCs will not be so much based on how lovely or how well written your application is, as much as how strong your existing contribution is. Because we don't think you need an SAYC to get inspired and do something for South Asia. If you are already inspired and doing something for South Asia, we would like to have you. So this is kind of a shift from saying from sort of only selections to mixing invitations and selections, which means if you're doing amazing work for South Asia, you can even expect an invitation from us. And even this SAYC this year, the 2014 online event, is a way for us to really connect with young people to see what they are doing and how we can get them to kind of be involved with future projects. Those who are active even on this SAYC are people who we'll definitely consider inviting for the future meetings. So the last part of this is what this means for you and as participants or as people connected to South Asian movement. Obviously, online is a great space, but there is also a lot of value to offline. We are hoping that we are able to pull off a 2015 event offline, and there is work on that, and hopefully an announcement soon. But having said that, we also know that there are a lot of barriers that come in, and we have to really overcome those barriers. So we're really hoping for a 2015 event. We have a strong organizing team of SAYC alumni who are experienced, who are working on doing this in their country. And as South Asian Youth Conference tradition is, we do not announce the country till the basics are in place. So we will be doing that, but it's a committed, motivated team. And so if things work out, then inshallah we'll meet in person in 2015. And this meeting is going to be it's going to be a little different from the previous one because its participants we are hoping will be a greater mix for a greater mix of people who are already achievers or doing interesting stuff. In terms of the program content, we will look at more active participation from the government, and we'll design a more unconference like structure, because we remember from Nepal, people really wanted to share, but they could not share enough, and we were so short on time. So, how do we move from speakers and workshops to more unconferencing and sharing more of what's up, and building those connections, and basically incentivizing action now, which means what it means for you is also your participation in SAYC will not be like a touristic participation where you come and check what's up with South Asia, but you actually are doing stuff for South Asia. And this, as I said, while I mean, it'll be great to have projects, it'll be great to have events or organization, but even small actions. I think small actions like supporting posts on South Asian youth conference groups or connecting different projects, those are also very, very important actions. So it's not the magnitude of the action as much as actually doing something. And that's what we are really looking for in the next South Asian Youth Conference. And therefore, what it means for you is to work on your chances of selections or invitation, in fact, is to keep up your South Asian level work and keep letting us know, being in touch with us, both with your work and work of others. And if you do let that happen for us, we would definitely look forward to reaching out to you and having you there. So, making yourself as someone who it would be great to have. So I think that's where we are right now, and therefore I would really encourage each of you to chip in, and just by being present at this seminar also you have, but to keep actively chipped in, to stay with us, stay on the radar, and we should be able to really uh, have